Alright, everybody, welcome to another week of Game Wisdom Live for the week of September 15th, 2019. We're in, I guess, fall summer right now. It's been another interesting week about news going on with Game Wisdom, and we have some great game design topics to discuss later on. But joining me this week, my co host is indie game developer Shark. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. We're getting in some interesting topics this week, I think.
They're either going to be very short or very long ones. We'll have to see what happens.
Indeed.
But as always, a quick recap as to what's been going on. We've officially cleared 4,800 subscribers here on the channel. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and enjoying the content. We are now less than 200 away from 5,000. I have no idea what we're going to do then, because I already did my play of Diablo 2 that we were talking about. So we gotta come up with something special for when that happens. An old Fortnite night, you think would work?
Uh,
Nobody's ever played Fortnite before.
Nobody Super Ninja.
But still waiting to hear back about book number 3. I actually got my book into a local bookstore. I gave him a few of my free copies. He's gonna put it up like as a front display, so we'll see if people buy it.
Hmm. That'll be interesting.
I also signed it too, so they're, I guess, quote unquote collector's editions. So we'll see if it actually does anything for the value.
It'd be bad if that makes the value go down.
Oh yeah, that'd be perfect. And I'm getting in about a week or so. I need to get ready for presentations. I have in October, and November, and the book fair I'm going to on October 5th. So I'm gonna be going pretty much all day that day. So hopefully nobody decides to blow up the Discord while I'm gone. Maybe I'll do a live stream while I'm there.
Yeah,
You guys can once again have proof that I do leave the house occasionally. Like I said, once a month I usually leave.
that seems too often.
Mm-hmm. But how's everything going with you, Shark?
Everything's going good. Slow, but good for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that. But let's see. Have you had a chance to play any new games or have any new games like you're interested in?
I played a little bit of a new game called Slain Back from Hell.
Mm-hmm.
It looks really interesting. It looks like a game that you would like and
Uh,
enjoy.
yeah, I think we did that one on stream a few months ago. I think maybe at the start of the year. We like ran through it. It's not that long of a game, but it's a hard one.
Yeah, I didn't get all that far into it. The controls just feel horrible to me.
Are you playing
But
keyboard and mouse or gamepad?
uh, keyboard and mouse.
Ah,
Probably need to try keyboard, gamepad.
yeah. You know, that's gotta be a topic for like at some point we need to talk about keyboard and mouse versus gamepad. Why one is better in some cases than the other.
Yeah. Well, the main thing that really shot the keyboard down was that they only have two keyboard layouts, and both of them are horrible.
Hmm. Yeah.
It's like the one that has uh, the one that has a space bar for the jump should be the other one that has a space bar for jump, and because one uses WASD, one uses the arrow keys,
Oh.
and that's the only two kind of configurations. But the ones that use the arrow keys has all uses like Q, E, and R, I think,
Oh man.
and
Yeah.
like it's is a whole mess. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just so confusing.
Yeah. Key remapping is probably one of those accessibility features that should pretty much be standard at this point.
Yeah, the problem I ran into was that we had that in our last game, but nobody realized we had it. Everybody's like, "This key, I don't like the way the keys are laid out." Well, then change them. How do I change them? Just go into the options.
Mm-hmm.
There's key remapping right there.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Like,
complaining about the keys, but there's nothing stopping them from changing it.
Just like when we did our quality of life piece. When you put it in, nobody notices. When you don't have it, everybody complains. Or in this case, when you do have it, everybody complains.
Exactly.
But yeah, like with Blasphemous that I've been playing, I had to adjust the controls just a little bit, make it easier for me. I made more Dark Soulsy by like switching two functions around. And yeah, like this kind of stuff is very critical for a lot of players. I also will give. I think we should also give bonus points to games where the tutorials and like the commands will actually update when you change the button prompts. Because again, it sounds like it's a very simple thing, but I think more games need to do that.
Yeah, we did that same exact thing in our last game,
Mm-hmm.
but it's I'm sure there's challenges to it. I just don't know what they are because I'm not on the programming side of things.
Mm-hmm. I would imagine, like, again, please keep in mind, I am not a programmer either, so this is not exactly high level programming. But I would imagine it would be something like having to pull whatever the key is set to, and then, like, having that, like, oh man. Again, if Mike or one of the other programmers is on, or as Draken is saying, oh, what is it? There's a way to set up so it doesn't call from something specific, but it pulls like from something else.
You probably programmed it into a string or something, then you call from the string.
Mm-hmm. Because I know like hard coding things or just like pulling straight things is like considered like a programming faux pas. Oh
Yeah,
man, I think
we're
it's like
talking
a
about remapping
this.
keys.
Yeah. I'll see if I can look at something there, Dragon. But I'm not a tech guy as well, so I'll see. I'll try and give my 2 cents there. Well,
I have very, very small knowledge, minor knowledge in programming,
oh
but
man,
not much.
it is definitely allergy season here. My voice is now going in and out. I
I
did, but I
imagine.
got through a lot of like part picking and stuff like that. Damn. Oh, here's some bad news. I found that my allergy doctor may be retiring in a few weeks. So I'm going to have to find another doctor for my lovely little shots I get.
I mean, maybe your allergies will retire with your doctor.
Yeah, I wish. If only it worked like that.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm. But, like, getting back to the little topic there, yeah, like keyword mapping, it's one of those things that I think a lot of I've seen this a lot from the independent side with a lot of these like crazy configurations. Like how when we play Path of Exile and M pulls up the shop for the microtransaction instead of the map.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I
Maybe
think
they did that so that more
yeah.
people would pull it up and see it.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking there. Because again, M is just like ubiquitous for having the map in a lot of ARPGs. M or yeah, that's usually like the full map.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I was trying to find if there's any other big news going on this week, and probably the one that I know that you're sad about is that Discord is cutting their game store feature.
Yeah, I had a feeling that that was coming, and I was not liking it because after
Mm-hmm.
because it was several months ago they pulled being able to buy games, and then there was just the free games up there that were
Mm-hmm.
well, not free, but they were free with Nitro kind of thing, and that was all that was available. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
hmm.
Yeah.
But I had a feeling this was coming. I was dreading it, and here it is.
Yeah. And it definitely sucks there about having another possible competitor, but I think it's the one thing a lot of people are learning that it's easy to announce that you're the next store and you're going to take on Steam or Epic, but it takes a lot of work and a ton of money to get things going like that.
Yeah. Should I announce that I'm going to be the next store? No.
Sure, go for it.
All right, everybody. I'm going to be the next store. It's going to be called the Shark Store,
There we
and you're
go.
going to be able to buy everything shark related, game dev wise. Any game dev shark games will be available on my store.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a good enough announcement?
There you go. Yep. And we'll announce the Game Wisdom store next. Nothing but Josh boxes and books you can buy.
And games for Josh.
Yep. If your game has the name Josh in the title, it gets free listing. There we go.
What about if it had wisdom in the name?
I don't know. We'll get half off. That'll be a half royalties for that.
Or
Well,
if it has game in the name?
hey, the Shark Tank store. I'm sure you won't get into any trouble at all with that one.
No, not any trouble at all.
Mm-hmm. Like if I call my store Ninja. Yeah, I
And
know.
only sell Fortnite.
Uh-huh. Or it'll be Fortnite, but spell Night instead of Nit. No
Right.
one will notice.
Right. I was really kind of surprised when I looked it up, and I did a Google search for the proper name to spell Fortnite, and I had to go through, I think it's 4 or 5 pages of results before I actually got to the definition of the word.
Yeah.
It was all just Fortnite spelled the game way, the wrong way.
It's a grammatical nightmare.
Yep. Now the grammatical nightmare. You have to scroll down,
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 pages to get past it.
Yeah. When I played Left 4 Dead, one of my friends' name was you, and that was just a nightmare. Okay, you have to go there, not you, you. I think he just did that on purpose. I think one day he changed his name to me. That would be.
Well, I had one of my friends go with the name of something,
Mm,
so that one always comes up.
yeah. I'm a lefty too, Gordo. I had to train myself for WSAD to use. But yeah, like whenever I play like a what was it? Like any of like the Wii games or Switch title. No, it was Wii or Switch, where you have like this, you can hold things in both your hands. Always have to make sure that movement is tied to my left hand, because I'm much. It's easier for me to control things with my left hand, doing subtle stuff like that, than it is with my right.
Right.
Although I've tried to train myself to write with my right hand, I can do like very basic numbers, but no, like I cannot write with my right hand. If I really want to throw somebody off, I can do that. Nobody will ever read it though. I know that's what I should do. Sign half of my books with my left hand, sign the other half with my right, and just completely like screw the market like that. Or they'll say it's a super exclusive right-handed sign. It'll be worth 5 times the amount.
What you can do is sign them up at the same time with your left and right at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Kind of what Dimitri Martin does, a comedian who can do both of his hands like that.
You
Yeah.
get them signed twice as fast.
Mm-hmm. Just like put like one hand on this side of the table, one on this side of the table, and just go like that.
And then have somebody loading up books on both sides.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm sure I'll have like 800 people wanting to buy my book on the 5th. I'm sure I'll have a line all the way out of the place.
Uh,
But yeah, at least like again, like back to our topic quickly. Like for me, when it comes to remapping, it definitely comes down to just how comfortable it is in my hands to control. Oh yeah, I've heard that one. There's another tangent right there. Mm-hmm. But
I know. On that topic, that one thing we did with the last game was not only did we give like full remappable controls, but we set up like tons of different default controls. Um, like we set up a where you could play keyboard only, or you could set up play mouse only, or you could play keyboard and mouse without even touching the controls to adjust them.
yep.
So like there's 3 different ways you could play without even touching the remapping.
Yeah. And I know some games will have like this could actually be its own mini topic. Like, what do you think about games that have like I'm not sure we would call this kind of like a specialized control scheme. Like the only one that I'm thinking about right now would be something like Hunt Showdown, where you had the hunter control scheme, then you had the I don't know the run and gun control scheme, and they would like change how things would work between them.
Hmm. You're talking about like asymmetrical controls.
Yeah, like I don't think I like that. That I think that opens up more problems than it fixes.
Yeah, probably.
Especially if it's a multiplayer game as well. Then you have people complaining, "Oh, you're only winning because you use this control scheme, or I can't win because I'm using that control scheme."
Hmm. They just need to be customizable.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and this could actually be like its own topic about control schemes and gamepad and keyboard. Maybe we should save this for next week and like do
Yeah,
like a full one. Somebody make a note about that.
I just did.
Oh yeah, and speaking about getting things prepared, we're trying to do a roundtable discussion between Shark, Tomo, and Ramin. And while Shark is the easy one, getting the other two is going to be a challenge in of itself right there.
Yeah,
Ramin is
especially with Tomo being busy right now with the. I don't know what he's busy with right now, but I know he's been busy ever since they came back from PAX. He's
yeah,
had a lot of things to do since then.
yeah, and Ramin is actually out of the country right now doing something that he can't tell me what it is. So he's doing something important somewhere, and he'll be back at some time. Lefty wisdom. There we go. Replace put like a left hand on the treasure chest.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
What you need to do is buy a little like sound effects board, uh, and put the little sound effects for like Zelda when they're opening the chest and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and have it only play if they open it with their left hand. If they open it with their right hand, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe there's just a different sound effect that says "open it with your left hand."
Mm-hmm. And Tomo Gang sounds like a 30s gangster. Sounds like one of those old timey gangster names.
Yeah, it does.
But I think with that, let's get to our first topic because we don't know how long these two are actually going to be. This could either be a very short or a very long discussion. And the first one we're going to be talking about is the idea of a dream game or making your dream game. And I think it actually leads really well into the second one as well. But
Indeed.
if there's one thing that I think everybody who gets in the game industry shares, it's that idea of making their dream game. That one game that they'll do everything they want to be able to make, whether it takes 2 years, 10 years, take 2, 3 mortgages out on their homes, it doesn't matter. They're going to make that game. And that passion has been a really great part about game development, but it definitely has kind of been I think a double-edged sword for a lot of cases. Because on one hand, your dream game could very well be that game that makes you famous. Whether it's Stardew Valley, Cuphead, we even talk about stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's and so on. On the other hand, if it doesn't succeed, exactly. Mm-hmm. I think less than $1. I think that would be the best one there. But
Free.
yeah. But on the other hand, when your game fails, and that was your dream project, what do you do after that? And there's definitely a lot to unpack in terms of where we could go with this topic. But trying to balance, like, or trying to even come up with your dream game at the beginning, I think is a good starting point. So, exactly, I think that's what everybody does at some point, right there, Draken. But, like,
Well, the thing is if they do like you said and take out like two mortgages on their house and get all these different loans and everything, and then their dream game fails, what they're going to be doing is begging for scraps on the corner because they're going to be homeless.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So you can't. I would advise against that path.
Yeah. But the problem, and I think this is where this topic gets very interesting, is how do you balance the reality of making a game with the dream game of yourself? Because again, it's one of those things that anybody watching this, right? Anybody who's not watching this has their dream game. I have 3 or 4 that I've gotten written down somewhere. And it's, again, one of those very tough lessons, I think, for a lot of developers to understand. That there's a difference between what you can make and what you need to make. Or, I'm sorry, what you want to make, or your dream game. Because again, everybody thinks, oh, I can, give me 2 years and I'll make the next Minecraft. Or, I can do World of Warcraft in 3 years with $100,000 and 3 people on my team. It doesn't work like that.
It does in Fantasyland, but nobody lives there.
Are we in Fantasyland, Shark, or are we like Fantasyland adjacent?
We're adjacent to Fantasyland.
Mm-hmm. We're in as we said last time, we're in Josh Apocalypse right now.
Josh Apocalypse.
Mm-hmm.
So I think every game developer that is going to succeed in some form or fashion will, there may be some exceptions, but I think every one of them will have a dream game.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think you can get into the industry and seriously just commit yourself without having a dream there.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, there's several problems. So one problem is, after you finish your dream game, what do? I mean, you've already accomplished your dream. What else? What more do you want? The other issue is generally you can't complete your dream game because generally your dream game goes into our next topic and has a scope that is way outside of your reach until you've made many games before.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And those are, two of the main flaws there. And so I think having a dream game is important. But I think it's also important to realize that you shouldn't start with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it should be maybe not something to end with, but maybe something to end with. I don't know. Like maybe you've done work in the industry for 20 years, 30 years, and it's finally time for the dream game, and you do it and go out on a bang kind of thing.
Mm. But yeah, Algordo said the same thing there. And again, like there are so many developers will take their first idea and go, that's what I want to make, before they've thought about anything else. And again, like as we've said, like the dream game or your passion is what's going to get you in the game industry. But you need to have like a plan if you want to stay in it. Again, like Jake Burkett from his talks is probably one of the best examples of this. He's made plenty of games that he's loved, but I think he's never again went YOLO on one of his game ideas. I think the same goes for somebody, especially somebody like Jeff Vogel. He's been putting out several blog posts these past few weeks about one of them being he's, I think, the cheapest SOB in the game industry. I think that was the name of his post there. And another one about why his games don't look that well. Because he knows at the end of the day that the games that he likes or he wants to make, they're not $1,000,000 sellers by any stretch of the imagination. And he does whatever he can to keep those costs down, so he knows that when his game sells, he still has enough money that he can live off of.
Yeah. The dream game is, I don't know, it's like a mythical unicorn kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's something you always want to achieve, and you have to remember that that I forgot exactly where I was going with that.
Is it that you have to do more than just make your dream game you want to survive in the industry?
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. That's what I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, like as you were saying a few minutes ago, many people will make their dream game, and then what do you do after that? Again, like this is one of I wrote about this when I made my post about why game design is a magical, or I'm sorry, about sustainable game development. That for a lot of people who are in the game industry, that sounds like a no-brainer of a question. But if you just spend 5 years of your life making your perfect game, where do you go from there?
Yeah, and I would argue that your perfect your your dream game, your perfect game, isn't going to be your dream or perfect game if you actually make it as your first or even second game,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that after our first game is that we're clearly way not ready for my dream game.
Mm-hmm.
It's we're going to need a huge team. We're going to need I need to know stuff I don't know now. There's lots of things that I don't know
Mm-hmm.
now that I need to know. But I know right now that if I went back and looked at my old design files for the dream game and everything,
Mm-hmm.
that it's not going to look good to me because I
Yep.
know so much more now than I did then. Because back then it was just a generic, like it was just basically a Final Fantasy game. I think it was more along the lines of Final Fantasy X, but with a different story.
Mm-hmm.
And that was mostly what it was, and different characters. And that just copy and paste design is
Yeah.
not a good one.
Yep.
But that's where it is right now. Basically, there is a few things in here there that are unique and everything. It's not just strictly copy and paste, but like there's so much stuff that I could do right now and make that design file way better.
Yep.
But that being said, is I still have a lot more I need to learn before I go back and truly make it what it needs to be made into.
Yep. And that's like another really interesting point there about having to revise or redo your dream game. Because again, this is going to be a really good lead into scope creep later on today. But that whole idea of here's my dream idea, it's a perfect game. 2 months later, okay, I'm going to change this, this, and this in it. Okay, 3 months later, okay, I'm going to scrap that, I'm going to redo this. And you're constantly just trying to chase, that idea in your head.
Mhm. That's where game design documents come in
Mm-hmm.
handy, and knowing what you're doing and scope creep and all this other stuff. And you need to have things laid out and
Mm-hmm.
put into your game design document. So, and you need to have a firm vision of how that game is going to work based on the game design document in your head.
Yeah.
You should be able to basically play the game inside your head from the
But
game design document.
eh, but of course the problem is that if you are doing like again your magnum opus, I'm going to make the game that's going, make Nintendo bow down to me kind of title, then it can become very hard to kind of grasp, okay, here's the idea in my head. How the hell am I going to actually program that? And that goes back to what you were just saying in terms of what you've learned and what you still have to learn if you want to do that.
Mm-hmm. And to what Brian said about the
Mm-hmm.
pre-production and simplification, I mean that's you got to learn a lot on design.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, I still have to learn a lot more in design and whatnot and get better before I go back, because you do need to simplify a lot of your stuff, and you they are generally overly complex, but you've got to get it laid out in such a way
Mm-hmm.
that it you simplify that complexity, because
Mm-hmm.
nearly any complexity can be broken down, and
Mm-hmm.
you need to that's part of game design right there, where you've got to problem solve and figure out how do you take this really complicated thing
Mm-hmm.
and simplify it. As in, I don't mean making the system any less robust, but simplify it as in the what is pointing forward towards the player so that they know how it works and
Mm-hmm.
it's easy for them to work through the user experience slash UI experience.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to get that overly complex without losing the complexity, but easy to learn. You have to be safely extreme in over
There we go. I knew that was coming. Yeah. And that, of course, right there is another really good point from El Gordo about, that level of commitment to a dream game. That just because that is your dream game, how do you know else is going to enjoy it? And this is one of those nastiness about like playtesting, or people who ignore playtesting. That they'll take their game to a trade show or a con, and people are like, I don't like this game. And the first thing they'll say is, well, then, the problem's on your end. How dare you criticize my dream and stuff like that. And that's not something that's just unique to game development. Again, like any artistic medium is going to have like that kind of artistic pride when it comes to your work that you can't really see where the issues are.
I think you just got us a new topic for next week:
Which one?
accepting criticism.
Oh, yes. Write that one down. It's good that
Yeah.
Shark's the co-host. He's the note taker. I'm the guy who just rants. But
So
oh yeah,
a
go ahead.
little bit on that.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to learn how to accept criticism and be able to adjust your design. I mean, you need to have, like we talked before, and when we're doing a game design talk
Mm-hmm.
on game design document talk, about how your document needs to be firm but flexible, aka
Mm-hmm.
safely extreme.
Yeah, it makes perfect
it
sense, right?
it needs to have. I think basically the easiest way to describe it is it needs to have a solid framework, like a frame of a house, but you don't need to put everything in the walls. You don't need to get everything lined up. You just need to frame the house and
Mm-hmm.
everything. That part is solid, and then you have like tons of areas in between that you can fill in
Yeah.
as things progress. And
It
it's hard, but it has space to grow.
yeah. And like to build on that, it's one of the things I think you could probably agree with me on this one, Shark, that it's one of those really good signs we've seen from some of the more successful indie games this past year. That when we play them, either like it's the first build or the early access version, that it feels very stable even at that point. Like for instance, Dead Cells, Slay the Spire. Well, we played with Hellsign last night on stream. Like these are three games that from the very first minute of playing them, I was enjoying it. Was all the content in? Definitely not. Were they balanced? No. But we could all see that there was something there from that foundation. And as you said, like the walls and the frame are done. Now it's just building or setting the furniture and doing the painting. As we broke on that analogy.
I think you just gave us another topic: when to go early access.
Oh, good.
Because I didn't mean to send that.
Oop. Yeah.
But yeah, I think the reason why those have there is are you familiar with a vertical slice?
Yeah.
They basically did a good vertical slice and tested it and made sure that
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff was working and everything. It didn't have all the content, but
Yeah.
everything was working. You had a solid experience for, a solid limited experience. And I think that is one of the keys to doing early access, as well as having a game that is privy to that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
like a genre. I mean, I don't think you would want to do anything story based, like a RPG or anything like that.
Yeah.
But like anything that has lots of replayability, I mean that definitely has a good
Yeah.
run to early access, and we do have to play that KFC game.
You want? I'll play. You can do all the narration there, Shark. Yeah, and again, like what we just said there with getting making sure the vertical slice is right or your basic concept, that it sounds a lot easier than it really is, I think, for a lot of games. And like we've said, like an RPG is probably a bad example. Even something like a 4X or grand strategy game would be hard as well when you have all these interlocking or interlaying systems trying to work together. But the problem is, and going back to this idea of a dream game, is that you may have, the entire vision, all the rules and mechanics in your head work out, but if you can't explain that to somebody, they're not going to give your game the time of day. It reminds me of when I spoke with Chris Crawford about his game, Siboot, something like that. That he was describing this insane idea of a game, and all the while I was just thinking, how the hell is that going to work as a gameplay loop?
Yeah, that's kind of why it's important, especially as like a team leader or something,
Mm-hmm.
to have like to dip your hands into like multiple fields of game development. You know, your programming, your
Mm-hmm.
art, design, all this stuff. Because when you're talking to an artist and when you're talking to a programmer, it's like you're talking one in French and one in German.
Mm-hmm.
A programmer and an artist generally cannot understand anything the other one says. So you have to, I think if you were to make your dream game, unless you're getting somebody else, if you're unless you're a member of a team and you're pitching that dream game to to the head person or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be a person who is a leader.
Yep.
But unless you again pitch it to somebody else, but then you're all dependent on them.
And don't forget, as the leader, you also again have to be willing to bend. You have to
Mm,
be again safely extreme in your leadership. You have to know when to bend and know when to uh, when to be strict in terms of what you want in your title.
exactly.
Oh, good. Why don't you throw in some fan fiction there too, El Gordo? But
Yeah.
there is. I want to switch gears for a second because there's one thing I'm sure people will bring up, and that is talking about the dream games that have succeeded. And what do you say about that? And I'm gonna give everybody two examples. The first one, of course, is one everyone is well aware of: Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley was, I think what do we say? It's either 4.5 or 5 years. I always forget the time range. How long it took
I
him to
think
make
it
it.
was six.
Okay, it was somewhere around that. That he basically wanted to make he wanted to basically make Harvest Moon for the PC. There wasn't any option for it, and it turned into his dream game. And he worked on it by himself for a very long time. He crunched as well. I think he said like he worked like 12 to 15-hour days a lot of time to get that game done. It was all by him, and the game succeeded. It very well succeeded. Again,
Hmm.
it's probably one, I would say, probably up there with Cave Story as like one of the more recognizable games coming from like a solo developer. But
Yeah,
again,
it's huge.
it's one of those titles where he spent 4.5, or he spent at least 5 years, maybe even more than that, in pre-production. We don't know of his life making that game. So it could have very well have crashed for him. But it sounded like he didn't invest a lot in terms of financial concerns into that game. And he did a lot of that part time.
I don't know about that.
Eh. again, it's very hard to tell because everybody has their own story, and we only hear the successes. If Stardew Valley didn't do well, nobody would have ever heard about it ever again.
So, are we sure that Stardew Valley was his dream game?
It
Did
was
he say
up
that?
there. I don't know. I know he said he wanted to make the game. Like it was the game he wanted to make. His dream's a dream game. There we go.
Well, every game should be the game you want to make,
Yeah,
that you're making anyway. Because if you don't want to make the game that you're making,
that's kind of a big
you're
problem
already
there.
in that path.
Yeah. Hmm.
If
Yeah.
it's somebody else's dream game or just a game that you're helping make, I mean, you should definitely be
Hmm.
wanting to make it, because if you don't, then it's not going to be
Yeah.
a good experience.
And of course, Laura brought up one major example of the quote unquote dream game, and that is Swarf Fortress. Again, the two brothers who have been making that game for, what are we up to, like 10, 11 years at this point, maybe even more than that. And like he has gone on record saying that he's going to keep working on that game until he dies. Like this is his game. Like he's not stopping it. And again, like that is what I think a lot of people will hold as the mantle for making your dream game. But I would say on the other hand, that is the worst business model you could ever think about when it comes to game development.
Exactly, and I think that he hasn't made much money with it either.
Yeah. And I know as the story goes, right now he's publishing it through KidFox, mainly because of medical issues and having to pay for medical bills.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
So
again,
your
yep,
dream game, if you want to go at it that way, is a way that you will never make a cent, basically, if it succeeds.
yep,
If it doesn't succeed, then you also don't make any sense, but nobody ever plays it as well.
yep. And again, like this is one of those issues that a lot of people will just immediately say Cuphead, Stardew Valley, Dwarf Fortress, and I want to make a game just like them. But you reasonably can't do that because every game is different, and again, every development is different as well. You can have two teams and say, go make Minecraft, and they may come away with two completely different experiences when it comes to making that game.
Yeah. Well, if they want to be, all these games, I just want to be multi-billion dollars. I want to be like Bill Gates,
Mm-hmm.
what's his name that owns Virgin,
Oh,
uh,
I forget his
name
name.
some other top one percenters,
Mm-hmm.
those people, it's as easy as just naming them and it'll be done.
Yeah.
If you can name them, you can be just like them. It doesn't take
If
any kind
the Amazon guy, Jeff Bezos, wants to support Game Wisdom and send me a few $1 million, I'll be more than happy to take that.
of.
We'll have a Amazon Alexa all like over the room, and they'll all like activate as I'm talking.
Yeah, you can be the next ninja.
There we go. Exactly.
You just have to name them, and if you can name them, they can do it. You can do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now, getting back to the topic, like another example I want to talk about, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Shark, about wanting to build your dream game, but at the same time having to know what you can make or you need to learn. I want to talk quickly about the Long War mod from, oh crap, I think they're just called Long War Studios. Let me see. Oh no, they're now called Pavonis Interactive. So I spoke with the lead designer on the Long War mod. We did a podcast, and my voice is really dying. Whew. Yeah, it's gonna be one of those days, I guess. But I spoke with the lead designer, or kind of like the founder of the Long War mod, on a podcast. I think it was like a year or so ago. And he talked about the fact that the whole idea basically started with them loving Firaxis' take on XCOM, but wanting to do more with it. So they thought, oh, this will just be an easy project, right? We're just going to add a few features to it. We'll be done very shortly. But as it turns out, not only was there not an SDK for XCOM. They had to basically build everything up. Then they had to learn how to do it all at the same time. And I think the project took. Let's see. I wonder if I can look this up really fast. It took. It was first released in 2013. No, it had to take longer than that. It started. I know it didn't just come out right away. Yeah, I can't find it really fast, but I know it took them a lot longer to actually get that version or get to like a 1.0 or to an official version for it. And it has actually done a lot for them because of the success of Lone War mod. It got it kind of influenced XCOM 2, and they of course got to work on the Long War 2 mod as well as a few other mods for it. And now because of that, they use it as a springboard for their next game, Terra Invicta, which is going to basically be their take or their original take on XCOM. But again, it all began as I want to do this, and then turns into how the hell do I do this?
Mm-hmm. I mean, for my dream game, I don't even know the stuff I need to know yet
Mm-hmm.
for the stuff that I need to put in there. So I don't even know what I need to know. If
Mm-hmm.
that gets any more safely extreme, you're going to be in
Yep.
trouble.
Oh yeah. And like that's the thing. Like for me, like I could tell you everything of how I want my dream horror game to work from a design standpoint. I have no idea how I would even program any of it. And again, like it's that always that issue of it, and this I think is the other major point. Let me check our time really fast. Like here's I think my final point, and I'll throw it to you, Shark. Like it's one thing we've said, and anyone who's ever worked in the game industry has said. Ideas are a dime a dozen. It all comes down to execution. Because at the end of the day, if your dream game doesn't play well or nobody can understand it, everyone's going to hate it. And again, you have to be able to temper your dreams with what can actually work in reality. Because there's also the other side of things. Your dream game may figuratively not be possible. You know, I'm going to design an open world, third person shooter, MMO, Minecraft, EVE Online with persistent elements, and all the combat will be Souls like. You know, I'm sure that will all work well together.
It might. It would be pretty hard to pull it
Mm-hmm.
off, though.
Yeah.
You'd have to have a really good design and everything. And
Mm-hmm.
this goes back to our previous topic of just throwing genres
Mm-hmm.
at a thing versus using a genre to solve a problem.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, the issue is that, as I said, on my personal dream game, you know, what I knew back then
Mm-hmm.
was less than what I know right now. And looking back on it, through the knowledge I've gained, there would be a lot of things that would have to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
They would definitely not be good. Flaws and everything in my dream game. And to make my dream game the way it should be, I'm going to have to learn all that stuff, and that's going to take time and experience.
Yep. Don't forget money as well of you having to build it and learn things along the way.
Oh yeah, it's going to take a big team too, because
Mm-hmm.
that game is not getting built without a big team.
Oh yeah, and I think you may have hit the title for this section when I cut up for YouTube. You know, there are flaws. Why there are flaws in your dream game or flaws in your dream.
Yeah, the I mean, my vision for that game is pretty much AAA graphics, and for that, we're going to have quite a large team.
Oh yes, and an art budget too. Don't forget that.
hmm We're going to have a lot of money,
Yep.
a lot of teammates, a lot of money, and to do it right, it's going to take us getting up to at least single A level, if not double A level,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And otherwise, my dream game would not be my dream game.
Yeah. And what you just said there at the end, what would be your, if it's not that, it's not your dream game? That has been the rabbit hole for a lot of developers out there. That they will stick to a project well beyond the point of even bringing any measure of a return on investment because they want that game to come out. And again, like we've said this before, everybody loves a winner. They, websites, YouTubers, they eat that stuff up about, solo or small team spends 5 years of their life and almost goes out of business to make this dream game, and now they're all famous and they all have, private islands in the Pacific. But
Yeah,
you don't hear about the failures. And that is very scary for a lot of people. Again, like that developer who did Destiny, like his company is folded. Like it got repossessed by the bank, and he is done. Like in his own country because of the failure of that game to succeed. And this is scary stuff. Again, like at minimum, you could lose a lot of money. At worst, you could lose your entire house and your livelihood if this game doesn't work.
yeah. Bear in mind that you can make a game that's not even your dream game, that is just a really solid game that doesn't have a huge scope or anything, and still lose a ton of money.
Yeah.
I mean, just going up to your dream game is just going to elevate that problem to a whole nother level.
Mm-hmm. And
You got to be careful.
and like I just said, everybody loves to hear about the winners, but how many people talk about things when they lose? And this is one of the things that I try to do with a lot of the Game Wisdom podcasts when I talk to developers about this. Like again, like it's not about attacking somebody saying, why does your game suck or stuff like that, but it's about explaining why didn't this game do well? Because more people need to understand why things don't work than when they do. Because we all hear about the winners. And
Yeah. The problem is that you know the saying, you learn more from your failures than
mm-hmm.
you do from your successes. I
Yep.
mean, you learn more from other people's failures than their successes. I mean, somebody, made Stardew Valley, single person. They did it all by themselves with basically zero money.
Mm-hmm.
They succeeded and now they're rich, or really well off, or whatever. How much of that helps us? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it shows us that it's possible, but it doesn't show us any way that it's possible. Now you look at another game, that's completely fallen apart or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you figure out why. You look into that and figure out why that happened, and you will learn a lot. You won't learn much from looking at Stardew Valley.
Yep. And again, and this is, I think, again, we could just keep pulling out points here. It's just that much of a topic. That when you look at a game that succeeds, it's sometimes too late to really give that game a critical look. I said the same thing about Darkest Dungeon. That all the people who are cross examining that game now aren't going to look at the years Red Hook spent marketing that game, doing testing, prototyping, the Kickstarter plans. All they see is, the game on the front page of Steam and PSN and Switch and go, oh, they just made a really great game, and that's all I need to do to succeed.
Yeah, that's the big problem is that used to be true,
Mm-hmm.
and now that that term, that saying, make a good game and
Mm-hmm.
you'll do well, has permeated everything. And
Mm-hmm.
it used to be true, but it's no longer true. And now that is shooting a lot of new people in the foot because
Yep.
the industry changed and that's no longer true. And part of the reason why it's not true is because of that statement itself. Because if you think about it, that statement caused a lot of people to say, "Oh, well, I can just go make a great game, and I'm good." So a lot of
Yeah.
people went to make great games, and then flooded the market, and now
Mm-hmm.
now you have to do more than that because the market's flooded.
Yeah. And again, that they are flooded with a lot of dream games too.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget, of course, all the not so dream games and the cash grabs and the weird games that we're going to be talking about in the next 2 minutes. That there are a ton of games being released. And we could probably, again, as you were saying earlier, we could probably spend a topic talking about accepting criticism. That there's a very good chance that you release that dream game and you're going to get flow with people saying this game sucks. Why isn't it like this? I can go play this one. Why the hell did you make your game like this?
Yeah, and and probably a lot of it will be legit because it'll
Mm-hmm.
probably be your first game, and again, like we said before, is you shouldn't be looking to do your dream game as your first game.
Yep.
You need to learn how to ride a tricycle
Mm-hmm.
before you're driving a 5,000 horsepower motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. And one other point, again, this could be its own topic as well, is the fact that for a lot of people who make their quote unquote dream game, they tend to go into a blinders mode. That they will not look at any other games lest it will be Soul Eat or stuff like that. And we see this a lot from independent developers, where we'll play their take on a platformer or a roguelike or whatever, and it feels worse than other contemporary examples of that genre. And you have to be learning, like it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Shark. You have to be learning what makes these games work. What are the essential foundations? Because again, just sitting in your room and naming all the games that are inspiring your dream game is not really explaining why or what elements are going to work in your title.
The this goes back to our game design talk about how you have to, and our genre talk for that matter,
Mm-hmm.
about how you have to stitch together your different mechanics and everything together in a
Mm-hmm.
cohesive way that they become not just mechanics but systems.
Mm-hmm.
And these systems have to be cohesive enough and work together enough between all the mechanics that you have stitched together
Mm-hmm.
to be able to properly work, feel good, add something positive to the game, not drag the game down. Because we've seen many examples where they've stitched stuff together, and while the stitching did make it solid and everything, it brung the game down instead of bringing it up. So even if you do a good job stitching things together, it doesn't mean that it's not going to drag your game down. You have to. I mean, that's a big part of playtesting and everything, and just design in general. And design in general, I think, requires playtesting because
Yeah.
I think as a designer, you have to play your game. I mean, I would not suggest putting 500 hours into it, at least not at the beginning. But like you know, put in a few hours every so often, every major version or something. Put a few hours into it, and you'll see things that your testers will not. Like I have had like instances where I had like a bunch of testers go in, maybe 8 or so, and they go through and they found a few problems. They each found maybe 5 or 6 problems, and 2 or 3 of those overlap on each one. So it ends up being maybe like 20 problems or whatever total. But then I go in and I see all their problems that they mentioned, and then I see like, how
Yep.
did you miss this? This is like glaringly obvious. This is like end of game obvious. This is no way going to work. We got to change that. And then
Mm-hmm.
there's this other big thing, other big thing, and other big thing, and it's like, how in the world did they miss these things? Okay, I'll add these to the list
Mm-hmm.
to theirs. I mean, their stuff was fairly minor, but like the stuff I seen was like glaringly obvious.
Yeah.
So I
And
mean,
and again, like if you don't have eyes on your game as you're building it, you're never going to be able to see this stuff because there are people who will just hold into their dream idea and will not do any play testing. They'll just keep building and building it without actually looking at to seeing, is this coming together? Or is it just a mess of design?
yeah,
And again, like, and I think this is one of those harsh pills for a lot of people to swallow. It should not be taking 5 to 10 years to make a single game. Like,
no, it should take 1 to 3 years.
yeah. And again, people will. I know saying that people are going to throw back at us in the comments saying, "But it's our passion. I want to make this game." And again, this goes back to what we were saying earlier that your dream game should not be your first game. You should be at the point where if you can make your dream game in 2 to 3 years, you are solid right there. That gives you a huge leg up above everyone else. But there is not one game that should be taking 5 to 10 years to be made. And
Yeah, that's that mismanagement is what they call that.
mm-hmm,
I mean, sometimes it happens and it's not
mm-hmm,
mismanagement, but most of the time when it goes over 3 years, it's mismanagement.
mm-hmm,
I mean, Stardew Valley is a good case of where it's not mismanagement,
yeah,
but there is many different things on there that we don't know. Like you said, that he was potentially only working on it part time, which means that and plus he was doing every role.
mm-hmm,
So there's many things we don't know about the development of that game, but like that would be potentially one of the exceptions to that
yeah,
because we know that it took 5 years, but did it really take 5 or 6 years?
yeah,
Was it really just 3 years? But that 3 years was expanded, broken up into chunks of periods because
yeah,
maybe he worked like all one summer and then like he took a break
yeah,
and then he had like 8 months off that he was working another job and maybe working like an hour or two on the game and then
yeah.
the next summer he would work hardcore. Maybe he was a teacher or something, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
He was teaching in school, and then only had a couple hours or so he could commit to the game, and then summer break, like he just could pour hours in total,
yep,
in 15, 16, 18 hour days on those.
oh yeah,
I mean, would you really consider those those 5 3 month periods and the little bit he got during the 5 8 month periods,
mm-hmm,
6 years? I mean, would you, I mean, there's no telling exactly what happened, but, it could easily be something like that.
yeah. And don't forget, like for a lot, one thing we hear a lot from like independent developers or smaller people like that they'll work on a game part time or bits and pieces here and there, and then when they start getting that major press or they start getting notice, then they'll commit full time to it. So it could
Mm-hmm.
be like 5 years, as you said. It could be like 2 to 3 years part time, and then maybe 6 months to a year of full time work at that point.
Yep.
But I think with that, let's move on to our weird game segment. We weren't expecting to go this long. Again, we said at the beginning this was either going to be a short topic or a long topic. And of course, it turned into a long one there.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
So what
Oh,
do
yeah,
we
we'll
have
get people
today
to the
on the list?
channel. I'm not sure they'll be saying nice things about us.
Eh,
I think they'll be saying the opposite there. Alright, but let me come over here. It's almost the end of the year, which means I have to start thinking about what are my top games of the year. So that's going to be a fun list.
Oh yeah.
Alright.
There's so many great games out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know what you could do? You could do like several top tens, not only your top 10 games, but your top 10 underperforming games.
That gotta be true too. I was thinking about doing video supplementals for. Usually, I write up my top 10 games, but I was thinking about doing like a maybe like a double video for those days as well. Just like talking about the games I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, what you could do is I would probably lead with your top 10 games, and then at the end, or maybe at the beginning, or maybe both, say that stay tuned for the next video. That's going to be the top 10 underperforming games, the games that I really loved, but they didn't. They failed commercially.
Hmm. Just do. How about just like top 10 of top 10 lists too as well. On top of that, just keep coming up with top tens. Huh. I was actually excited about this game. I thought this was Creatures based on that old PC game from the '90s. Looks just more like looks more like Spore, like the early concept of Spore to me.
Yeah, I got an idea. You can do 10 top tens. Your top 10 top tens.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I think we looked at this one last week.
Flint.
Oh, Nautocrawl? Hmm. What's going on here? Top 10 of your. Yeah.
Your own top tens. The top 10 top tens he wanted to do.
Fun
What's
Adventure for
that Flint
Kids.
one?
Looks like a
Yeah,
like a Flappy Bird esque game.
yeah. Had a good thumbnail though.
Hmm.
Not
Traffic.
horrible art.
Hmm. Oh my god, could this be a page where there is no hentai related games? Oh my goodness, it's gonna snow tonight. No, I see a visual novel game.
And no hentai.
Oh my god, I'm scared.
It's,
What does that mean?
it's the end of the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh wait, and now we get to the next page. Well, the dream only lasted about 5 seconds there. Daymare? Third.
Muscles and bullets. That's the interesting title.
1990 is a third-person survival horror with hardcore survival mechanics and hard-to-kill enemies.
Hard to kill. It sounds like bullet sponges.
Oh, well, there goes us getting demonetized by YouTube for that one.
Uh-uh.
How about you guys come up with some of those lists, or get some videos on those? Ooh,
Here's a question: on you said your dream horror game. Did it have stealth in it?
partial stealth, but you could still be aggressive.
Uh, I think your dream horror games needs more stealth.
Hmm. What? Rebel Cops, spin-off of This Is the Police.
Tactical RPG from the looks of it.
So they're
Is it cover
basically.
based?
I'm sorry.
Is it cover based like XCOM and Mario plus rabbits?
Hmm.
It looks like it might be.
Yeah, it looks like the developers. If this is the same, it better be the same team, or somebody's gonna be sued. Yeah. So the developers took the tactical gameplay that they expanded on in This Is the Police 2, and they're turning into their own game. Very
Hmm.
interesting approach, because that game felt very split brain or split personality. You had the whole managing your cops and doing crimes around town, and then you go into this full-on tactical strategy side with the when you went on raids. Well, the horror game did deal with cosmic events, so I guess that does count as Lovecraftian.
I
Uh,
haven't noticed any trends, but I don't know everybody's dream games either.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. Child inspiration, I don't know. It could just be like something they've wanted to do. I don't know like when they would think about it.
My personal one came from like my love for RPGs. my main inspirations were like Final Fantasy 7, 10, uh, Chrono Trigger, um, Final Fantasy 4, several others, but like that Star Ocean till the end of time.
Mm.
Like those were like my main inspirations, and I played those, and I just fell in love with all those games, and that inspired me to make another game. And I'm not going to go much into my dream game. I will just tell you the basic idea behind it was that it started off as not a dream game, but just a fan game kind of thing. It was going to be uh, basically a Final Fantasy fan game, and I was going to call it Final Fantasy Nexus. And you're starting to connect some dots here.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, Final Fantasy Nexus was going to be basically a game that I had my own characters in. Uh, a huge boss, bigger than any other boss, came up, and then you went to every other Final Fantasy game and recruited the characters from them, and then you had like all of the characters in the ultimate fight.
Oh. Alright, here's that Muscles and Bullets. I just love this. They entrust the name to Bazooka Kurt and his partner. The partner doesn't have a name, he's not good enough. And Mojo will love this. It's planned to have split screen co op. It's not in there yet.
Uh-uh.
Let's see.
Kind of, Oscar.
Find
Actually, I really don't want to make this connection, but the game, I think it was the Lawnmower Man had, where he had like recruit like 99 characters kind of thing.
Mm.
There's obviously game flaws in there if you don't do it right.
What the heck is this game?
I have no idea.
Poker? It's a card game? Okay. Alright. And that thumbnail does nothing for it.
No, I'm not taking inspiration from that game, Oscar. It's just the closest explanation of something that exists similar to it. But I will tell you, if you eat Chromasia, there we go, the word of the day for Mojo. If you beat our last game, Chromasia, there is a hint. There is something in there about that game. In there.
Little Misfortune. Why does that name sound familiar?
I tell you, there'll be something along that lines in Project
Oh.
Triad too when that releases.
Ah. Hmm. Fran Bow. Why? I've heard of that game. I'm gonna play that one. Now with real human voices. Oh, you can fall in love and commit petty crimes.
You need to commit a bunch of them.
Hmm.
I gotta love that feature. There's a molester. Did you see that feature?
Yeah, there's a monster right there. I hope it's that guy, or this is gonna be very awkward.
Yeah, that monster.
I do
It
like the
could
art
not be
style.
that monster.
Looks like this dog is summoning Cthulhu right there. Or, I'm sorry, this fox. And the fox is a fanny pack. Alright. I'll put
Does
in for
that
that.
tell us nothing?
I don't know. Hold on one second.
So what would he be? Tell?
Let's see. Sorry, I had family ask me a question there. Oh, there's the Void Bastards DLC. Offside? Wait. what that is. Looks like it's a soccer game or a loose take on soccer. Oh, and it's an indie genre too.
Oh yeah, the indie genre just tells you everything you need to know about that game.
Alright, let's see what's coming in the Void Bastards DLC. New weapons, new opponent, new ships, that's good. Oh, they're sucking the air.
I got a question for you, Josh. If you made a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you make it in the indie genre?
Can I make it in the Josh genre?
You might make it in the Josh genre. I mean that is a thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you got the game for Josh and whatnot.
I am really afraid to click on this one. You like that thumbnail, Shark?
I can't even make it out.
I'm afraid. Oh my.
Oh, I would be afraid to click that one too.
Oh, that's a thing. It's not even indie here.
It's not the indie genre,
No.
so this was made by AAA then,
Sure.
or
Let's
Double A.
let's go with that one.
It's a AAA developer right there.
Let's see. Crying Sun. Tactical roguelite. When FTL meets Foundation.
That looks really good
Hmm.
graphically. I love
Yeah.
the animations and everything.
Crying Sun sound familiar to me. It wasn't a Kickstarter game. Yeah, I'm liking like the UI here.
Yeah, I actually need to look at that game.
Hmm. It reminds me
So,
of that game that I played. Anyone can remember this one? It was that you run like a space station. You're trying to fight like these aliens, and like your units are ships that you build. It felt like it was very RNG heavy, but also had like a complete rebuild of the design. Can't remember the name of it though.
apparently, that is a Kickstarter game.
Okay. Marshmallow Madness. Forgetful Dictator? What?
And
Insert.
I am seeing FTL referenced with it.
Mm-hmm. What the hell is this? Okay. We were talking about combining things. It looks like you have to spell the names of the countries to take it over. But you also have to answer trivia questions.
Mm.
Okay, that's a thing. Area 51, they're still talking about that. Overland.
You know what they should make is a Area 51 spelling game. Anybody who plays that will it'll be like the Dark Souls of, of spelling games.
This doesn't look too bad.
What's the name of that one? I think it looks familiar.
Overland.
It looks familiar. I think I've seen that one somewhere.
It reminds me of that game that I played when you're Death Row to Canada or something like that, when you have to travel. But it looks like it's turn-based instead of like a real-time crazy beat 'em up. Hmm. All right. Getting some good games this week, or hopefully good games, I should say. Mythgard. Somebody was telling me, I got an email about this one.
This card?
It's a CCG.
Mm-mm.
The card art looks pretty good, although I have no idea what I'm looking at in terms of how this game plays.
Yeah, the UI seems really kind of crowded
Yeah, a lot of stuff, and they're going
all
for
over the
visual
place.
effects on the field too. Hmm. Do we call this steampunk? I don't know what this aesthetic is. Is that a fishing line or a whip? I have a lot of questions about this outfit.
Yeah.
And that's a ninja. That's generic tough woman.
I have to tell you this. I called it last week or the week before how I thought that cyberpunk and other sci-fi related genres are gonna stop popping up everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
here we are, like what, two so far
Mm-hmm.
we found.
Oh, they're bringing back
Oh,
Puzzle Quest again.
and then whenever Project Triad releases, that'll be another one.
I am really afraid to click on this one. Again, you have an AO tag on Keymailer. That's not a good sign. Grappling hook.
That sounds like a really in-depth game.
Oh, it's a VR game too.
Not as It doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to look.
Oh, and now we get to the hentai. Niflheim. I thought that game was out already. Well, it's being re-released on another platform. Alright, one more page after this, and then we'll move on to our final topic. Chicks and Tricks in VR. Oh, the coloring game is getting another update.
Are they getting new colors?
Maybe. Maybe they've invented some colors. Stars N? It's like open world survival. Oh, with procedurally generated planets, too.
Procedural generation can be a good thing or it can be a bad thing, depending
Mm-hmm.
on how it's done. Execution, back to what we were talking about earlier.
And there's already a hentai version of that coloring game. I did not think that would happen so fast.
Yeah.
It's like, what's
Oh,
that rule that anything can be have a porn parody?
I think that's Rule 34.
Oh god, we are so. I'm gonna get so flat for this one. Kronak, fast-paced action platformer. Looks like just like a multiplayer action game.
Yeah, but is it co-op or is it online co-op?
Oh, online LAN or split screen.
Uh-oh.
Mm.
Mojo might be into that one.
What? Wait. What? Feels like just more like a tower defense game.
Is that VR?
Is it?
Kind of looks like it.
I'm not seeing VR. Hmm? Okay then. Torchlight Games. Again, when you say Torchlight, just immediately go to Torchlight, the ARPG.
Mm-hmm.
What the hell? Okay, I was not expecting that from that thumbnail. And it's an indie game, too.
It's indie genre.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
That's a very good name, right? I'm sure that comes up in Google search very often.
We might need to have a topic one day about the indie genre.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be less of a topic, more of a rant.
Yeah.
We could probably do a pretty long rant on that.
Mm-hmm. I should get Jeff Vogel on for that one. He can join in on the ranting.
Uh,
All right. But
maybe you can start a second cast on a different day, and it'll just be the rant cast, and
mm-hmm.
we'll just pick two topics to rant about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't even need to be there. I can just say, here you go, and then just walk away.
Exactly.
All right. But a quick time check. We are about almost an hour and a half in, so we'll spend. Let's see. I'm not sure. Like, do you think we can do this one in a short time, or do you want to save it for another one about scope development or scope creep?
I think we've already hit on a lot of things in the last topic for
Mm-hmm.
it, so I don't think it'll be too long because I think we've already covered some of it through the dream game stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, let's try and set a quote unquote solve stop for 30 minutes then, because we'll be at 2 hours then.
All right.
All right. And also, it's getting very dark in my room now. Again, you can see the passage of time behind me.
You
But
need to install a new sun in your window.
yeah, I need a fog machine too.
Yeah.
But for our final topic of this, we want to talk at least somewhat briefly about scope creep and trying to keep scope under control. And as Shark was saying, this is a very good segue from our previous topic, talking about your quote unquote dream game. Because scope creep and dreams certainly go hand in hand. And it's a problem that plagues a lot of developers out there. Whether you're making your dream game or not, that ever popular idea of just keep adding more to your game and surely it will make it better. I was just about to say that. And of course, the number one example of scope creep in action, taking the crown away from Duke Nukem Forever, is of course Star Citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what's going on over there. They have their the game's not out, and they already have their own fan convention for it.
Oh,
Hmm.
Do they have their own esport yet?
Maybe. Did Ninja switch over to them yet?
Probably.
Let's see. What do they currently? What? I'm not seeing how much money they've raised so far.
That's. I'm sure they don't reveal those insanity numbers.
They used to.
That was probably before they got to raising more money than Bill Gates has.
Mm.
Like they probably raise more money now than Bill Gates has ever seen in his entire life.
Mm. But I gotta get to pay. I have to pay to get in. Oh, jeez. But as we were saying, when it comes to scope creep, Star Citizen is definitely an example of that. Where they not only have to stretch goals on the Kickstarter, then they have pledge goals on top of that. And right now the game's at alpha. What is this? 3.6. It's definitely been more than 36 updates, I can tell you that much.
Out of how many?
Oh my.
Are we going up to Alpha 368?
Maybe.
Alpha Infinity.
Mm-hmm. And how long has this been in development for? When was the Kickstarter? I'm kind of afraid to look this up.
Oh, it's been a long while.
Alright, they've been doing it for at least 7 years. According to the Kickstarter was on October 18 of 2012.
You remember what we talked about before about any game beyond 3 years is usually
Yeah.
mismanaged.
Mm-hmm.
See,
And
the all the things are connecting to. And I wonder if Star Citizen, I bet you Star Citizen is their dream game.
mm-hmm.
I bet you anything.
Oh my god. So according to a article that was released earlier this year, they have raised at least over $250 million for the game.
Mm.
Oh my god. Again, it's either going to be a spectacular game or a spectacular failure at this point.
I think it's only going to be a spectacular failure because
Mm-hmm.
the thing is even if it's a good game, it's not going to live up to all the hype and everything.
Mm-mm.
It there's basically no way to fail, no way to succeed on that. I mean, think about Half-Life 3. I mean, all the hype for Half-Life 3, and Valve's never going to make it because no matter how good of a game they make, it's not going to meet expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Star Citizen is one of the is to that point where
Oh,
no matter what it does, it's not going to meet expectations. So
yeah,
even if it's a really solid game, it's still going to be a failure in that terms because it's
yeah,
going to not meet expectations.
yeah. And again, like when it comes to this kind of scope creep, like some of the stuff they added in, it just seems like why? Like at one point they added in they're going to get their own language made for all the aliens in the game. Okay, that it sounds interesting, but how does that actually compare, or what does that have to do with spaceship simulation?
It doesn't,
Mm-hmm.
but you know that could be really done really easy. I mean, all you got to do is have a designer go in there and just take and translate
Mm-hmm.
our alphabet into different symbols and different pronunciations, and bam, another language.
You could have done that, and I only needed to raise like $500,000.
Exactly.
I don't even know what the amount they had to raise for that, by the way.
We always joke about you could add multiplayer in a weekend
Mm-hmm.
or an hour if you skip lunch, but this is something you could literally do if you do it the way I was talking about in an hour or
Mm-hmm.
potentially a weekend.
Yep. And of course
No
they've
joke on that one though.
yeah. Of course, they've spent money. There's now a single player campaign on top of the multiplayer. They, of course, got big name actor, I think Mark Hamill's in the game. And again, all this stuff is, well, more stuff. But at the end of the day, and going back to the idea of the dream game, if it doesn't make sense within the span of your core gameplay loop, then it's all just superfluous. They already canceled one thing already. And
Oh, they turned it into two games. There was a
mm,
first person game like shooter game part of it, and then they made it into a separate game, and now apparently they canceled that game.
oh
I wonder
god.
how many people paid for that game
Mm. And
and how much they paid.
and there's one thing I actually want to touch on because we didn't talk because I think this is the opposite of scope creep of knowing how much to put in your game to make sure people are going to enjoy it. Because this kind of goes back to what Mojo was bringing up on the Discord channel with Children of Morta, that they purposely left out online co-op because they didn't want to risk the game going over budget. But then so many people demanded it and knew that they wanted to put it in that they decided to add that in as a campaign or as an additional feature. And it is very tough to know sometimes just how much to put into your game. Because you could theoretically have a great idea, but not go far enough with it.
Yeah, I know. We had several people asking for multiplayer on our last game, and our last game does definitely like. I mean, you could technically make any game a multiplayer game. I mean, you can have a multiplayer visual novel. It doesn't really make it a prime example of something that should have multiplayer in it.
Mm-hmm.
And our last game isn't a prime example of that. I mean, like, but the thing is if you're having co-op, I think you should have online multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you just have a design that screams there should be multiplayer, then you should have multiplayer. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, like I mean, card games, a lot of them scream to have multiplayer,
Yep.
but not all. I mean, like Sway the Spire doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
We got a lot of games along the lines of Slay the Spire that does not screen for it. But you have, on the other hand, other games like Magic the Gathering, Hearthstone,
Gwent,
Project
so
Triad,
on, yeah.
Gwent. Yeah, that just they're pretty worthless without multiplayer.
Yep. And again, you just never know, like when you're trying to expand things, what is really going to resonate with people. And to give you like another like complete pivot of example, we could turn to Warframe for a few minutes. Warframe is probably one of the most like biggest like down and up in terms of its community and its success that we've seen. Like I think of this decade. Like when the game first came out, like all those years ago, I remember a lot of people just hating that game. It got very poor reviews. A lot of people said it was pay to win. There wasn't a lot of stuff to do in it. And they stuck with it. And they have expanded that game in just insane ways for that kind of gameplay loop. They've added in, I think there's now open world segments. I know the regulars who play Warframe can probably elaborate on more of the stuff they've added in. And like this was a case where they took this core gameplay and they've built so much around it that it has added overall to it. Like it's just like the complete opposite example of what they've been doing with Star Citizen.
And that's one of the great things about early access, because
Mm-hmm.
early access allows you the room for that. It also allows you to evaluate the market, because you can put a game out there and see how it does, see what feedback it does,
Mm-hmm.
gets, and whatnot. And the other great thing about early access is basically you get tons of testers in theory, and they pay you to test your game. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how hard it is to get
Oh
testers
yeah,
to test your game for free.
yeah, and like
Usually people want to get paid to do that kind of
yeah,
thing.
and like you just said, like when it comes to testing concepts and stuff like that, they can pretty much tell you, we hate this, we like this one. That just saved you hours upon hours of, hard choice of trying to decide what to focus on with your game.
Hmm.
And this is, I think, another really weird point about scope and scope creep. Is that while we talk about examples like with Warframe, with community engagement, stuff like that, there's also the challenge of knowing what's that old adage about. I think it's the Henry Ford quote that if you just ask people what they wanted, they would have wanted, a better horse carriage. That sometimes when you're trying to build or expand things out, it's kind of hard to tell what the impact of that's going to be. And my example I always go to are the expansions that Firaxis did for XCOM and XCOM 2. War of the Chosen and Enemy Within added in game systems that I don't think anyone was expecting or even thinking about, and they still worked so well that I can't imagine playing either one of those games without those expansions. But again, like without speaking to Jake Solomon, which I would love to do, it's hard to know like when you're adding in brand new systems, how do you know what to change like that?
Well, I think that's a combination of knowing design
Mm-hmm.
and testers,
Yeah.
testing your game and telling you what they like and what they don't like. And you, when it comes to testers, you can't take them 100% for what they say.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta think of it as it like a game designer has a lot of parallels with a doctor, actually, because
Mm-hmm.
a patient comes in, they say their stomach's hurting. I mean, it could be
Yep.
anything from them being constipated to them being having like stomach
Food
ulcers to
poisoning. Yep.
food poisoning. It could be any number of things, and they may say that they think they have ulcer or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to look at their complaint and not so much their suggestion.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely need to take their suggestion into account, but you need to figure out why they made that suggestion, find out what the core problem is, and then when you see that core problem, then you can figure out how to fix it.
Yep.
Usually, their suggestion to fix it
Mm-hmm.
usually isn't the right way to do it,
Yeah.
but sometimes it is.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not professional game designers like you are.
Mm-hmm.
They see a problem, they come up with their solution, which may have made the problem worse, or may make it better, or just slightly better, or anywhere in between. But you need to get to that core issue that they have, and then go off of that.
Yep. And again, it takes a master level of understanding of game design to add in original systems to a game. Because, I mean, we could talk about scope simply in terms of more content. It's a 10 level platformer, I'll add 20 more levels. This is a 10 to 20 hour RPG, let's add 20 to 40 more hours of story.
Or
And
just add a little bit more grind.
yeah, and again, like, you have to know just, and I've said this before, you have to know just how much you can get out of your mechanics. This is one of the reasons why Mario still holds up, or Mario World. That those mechanics offer a lot in terms of things for people to work with in the Kaizo community or with Super Mario Maker. Like, if Mario World was just simply Mario walks, jumps, and those are all the mechanics in that game, it wouldn't be that long of a title, let alone, one of the legendary ones.
Yeah. And Oscar brings up a good point that scope also depends on resources, time, money,
Mm-hmm.
team size, and whatnot.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, like, when you're working on your game design and everything, you have to take in all those things into
Mm-hmm.
consideration. You got to take apart how many team members you have, what their skills are, because you need to know your team member skills and how good that they are at something. I mean, you may have a really good programmer that is good at most things, but he can't do 3D. Or maybe he really sucks at networking stuff. So, I mean, if he sucks at
Mm-hmm.
networking stuff, you probably want to avoid multiplayer stuff.
Yep.
If he
Mm-hmm.
sucks at 3D stuff, you probably want to
Mm-hmm.
refrain from that. Like, you need to know everybody's talents and everything on the team. You
Yep.
need to know you got to have enough money to pay your team, and you're
Mm-hmm.
outsourcing and all this,
Yeah.
and you have to make that all within a time frame that you're going to have the money to go that long.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned money as well there. Because again, it's very easy, as we said with the Dream Game, to go all in. We've had this discussion before about developers working on free DLC and expansions for years after their game succeeds. And on one hand, it's like, yay, that's great for the consumer, but how the hell are you affording all this extra work that you're doing on your game that you're not charging for?
Well, I mean, they wouldn't necessarily not get paid for that because the fact is the free DLC and whatnot, free updates and everything,
Mm-hmm.
can often lead to press and whatnot, which will bring in a lot more sales.
But
But
not
that would
always.
only be if you get the press that brings in the sales.
Yeah.
If you're not, then you're just wasting money at that point.
Yeah. Or you have something else there to kind of supplement the income. Path of Exile being a good example. All the game changing content in that game is 100% free, but they have monetized everything else outside of that.
Yep, and that's like a ongoing budget kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's games as a service technically.
Oh, yeah.
I really hate that term. I know the people who abuse games as a service really hate that term now too. That they coined,
Mm-hmm.
like they hate loot boxes and whatnot.
And that is another topic for another time. We need to get our mean back on for that one.
Yep.
Yeah. And like what Draken was saying, you need more game devs to learn business than just hiring business people. And yet, again, like the business side of the game industry or game development is rarely talked about. And I don't know how much it's taught in schools as well. Because
I
again, you
don't
can
think.
teach somebody programming and art all day long. You can't really, but if they don't know how to make a game or what the business side of things are, we then get into these kinds of issues.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the business side is easily teachable, but it doesn't seem like it's taught.
Yeah. It's not the
The
quote
program,
unquote fun side of game development.
yeah, programming is easily taught. You just have to have a mind that can grasp it. Art is easily taught, but I mean, you have to have there has to be a core talent there to be
Not
able to.
not here, I'm afraid. Definitely not here when it comes to art.
Yeah, you have to have a core talent to be able to receive that
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing. And, you know, to what level you can receive it depends on your talent and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you can teach music and sound effects and whatnot. You don't seem to be able to teach game development, though,
Yeah.
or game design, rather.
I hope I
Game
can. That's
design.
my goal with the books.
I
Yeah.
mean, like truly teach it.
Yeah.
I mean, we have. There's definitely some aspects of it that you can teach.
Yeah. But you can't teach someone like uh, make an amazing platformer, or you know, I want you to go make a procedurally generated roguelike that keeps people invested for at least 50 hours.
Or invent a new mechanic that has never been made before.
Oh, yeah. And add multiplayer to it too. Yeah. Yeah, and I mean that's its own topic as well. What Brian's saying about the fail rate. As we've said, you can do everything right and still fail.
Yeah, I think 80% is very conservative. I think it's a lot higher than 80%. A lot higher.
And yep, and that's another good point there, Brian. So I know training in business would make a difference. And again, like when you're trying to build a game like this, and again, this leads back or goes back to the dream game idea. People will put everything they can and everything they want into these titles. But unfortunately, as we've said before, what you put in doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to get out of it. Like again, like El Gore mentioned Owl Boy earlier, that it was in development part time for 10 years, and we played that, and I hate to be mean, but I did not see 10 years of development in Owl Boy. And
Yeah,
again, it's very mean to say this stuff, but you could spend 5 years of your life making a video game that people will only get maybe 20 minutes of enjoyment out of it.
yeah. There's a saying that says consumers don't care how long it took you to make the thing. They just
Mm-hmm.
care how much enjoyment and how long they get that enjoyment out of it.
Yep.
So I mean that's where playtimes come into like a selling point kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
but only if they're willing to take it that far. Like
Mm-hmm.
games that you can clock 100 hours in,
Mm-hmm.
um, unless people are clocking 100 hours in them, they're not going to care that it's 100 hours. They're only going to care about the time they clocked.
Yep.
If they only clocked 10 minutes in there because it was only interesting for the first 10 minutes, that's all they're going to care about, and
Yep.
it wasn't good enough. It was just 10 minutes refund.
Oh yeah. And again, like this is that. We even go with the whole Steam refund policy here as well. This is why main developers are pushing for adding more in their games because they think that if I make, I've said this before, if I have a 10-hour game and I add 10 more hours to it, that's double the time. That means I'll get double the review scores and double the money. But
Exactly.
it doesn't work like that. It could work if your game is legitimately double or two times better. But who's to say that? Again, you
Yeah.
can't really quantify game design in a lot of these cases.
Yeah. I mean, if you have a game that is procedurally generated, that is done in such a way that it works well, and
Mm-hmm.
you can have a game with basically infinite playtime.
As
I
we
mean,
said before, the
Minecraft.
mythical endless replayability some developers have been trying to say.
Yeah, Minecraft hits that.
Mm-hmm.
7 Days to Die. Lots of different games hit that.
Spelunky could even be close to that too.
Mm, haven't played that one.
And there you go with Dragon's Head. You just need to have 2 hours and 10 minutes of amazing gameplay, and you're golden. That's our
Yeah,
next business strategy. Besides Safely Extreme, just make a game that is exactly 2 hours and 5 minutes of perfection, and you're good.
yeah. It's the thing is that Steam does go past the 2 hours, so
Yeah. And to
so it's
Brian's question, I would say definitely not. I don't think play length is a measure of quality. Some people like to think it is, but I think for me, it really comes down to I'd rather have quality than quantity in terms of a game. Now, in many cases, like with Slay the Spire, Binding of Isaac, and so on, like those games, like I have played them for at least a good 50 to 100 hours easily, and I've certainly gotten my money's worth out of it. But I've also played games like I know Mojo is saying as a negative example, but I really like Blazing Chrome, but I really only got about 2, maybe 3 hours tops of enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, I think the time comes with the price. I think it's a
Mm-hmm.
time price equation. Like you have like if you enjoyed a game like 10 out of 10, but it was only an hour long and it was only $10, it's like yeah, I'll keep it. But if it was like a 8 out of 10 and
Mm-hmm.
it lasted like an hour and a half, but it was a $20 game, it's like
Yeah.
refund that.
Yeah, like for me, like I've done that myself a few times. Like if a game is like $5, $10, even if I don't love it, I will usually keep it just to maybe come back to it at some point. If it's like $30, $40 and I don't like it, yeah, that thing's getting refund, faster than you can say Steam refund.
Yeah, I think there's an equation in our head,
Mm-hmm.
and actually I need to do some research in that. The equation between time of gameplay, the quality of
Mm-hmm.
experience you gain during that time, and the price, and figure out if we can find out some kind of like rough equation kind of thing
Mm-hmm.
to mathematically quantify that kind of
Yeah.
result.
Mm-hmm. And again, like as we were saying earlier, with the dream games or having that good foundation, that if people enjoy your game from minute one, they're more likely to stick with it into hour 5, hour 10, hour 20, and so on. And a lot of developers have, again, chased that dream of the endless value of their game. And it's something that is very rare. And like even for myself, like I don't think I've ever played a game just like from my own personal standpoint that I could play forever and ever and ever and just never get bored of it. But again, like when you're trying to think about your game from a scope perspective like that, it becomes very hard not to get lost in the weeds of I'm just going to keep adding more and I'm going to do this and this and this. And going back to what I think Draken and Ushark were saying earlier, it also is a factor of the team and the money. Like again, like with something like Dwarf Fortress and its ASCII kind of graphics, you can add new stuff to it, and it's not going to take you, 2 to 3 years. If you try to do that in a AAA game with Unreal Engine 5 or whatever the version is, yeah, it's going to take you a little bit longer to do all that.
Mm-hmm. The thing is you've got to keep. Um, Now I've done lost what I was going to say. You got to keep remembering what you were going to say.
Yeah,
That's my point here.
Summers. There we go. Exactly. We need more consumers making video games.
That sounds like a good recipe right there.
If we get 10,000 monkeys and 10,000 typewriters, they'll make Star Citizen, right?
They'll write a book.
Yeah. About
And
Star Citizen.
it'll go infinitely early access.
Yeah. And again, like this is I think ultimately the big problem. I have another example I want to talk about, and then I think we'll begin to wrap things up. That some as Mojo's saying, and it's not that unfair for what he's saying. Like there are games out there that are great and could just use a little bit more to be flat out amazing. But the problem is twofold. One, you don't know how much it's going to take to get to that point, and two, you never know what aspects again people are going to resonate with that they're going to demand more of. And Battle Brothers was a really good example. That they released that game, they were done with it, And people said, we want more. And again, you have to be careful just how much more you put into these titles. Because as we've seen many times over, you can have a game that succeeded and then bankrupt itself trying to again chase that dream or chase the dragon of we're just going to add more and more to it and we'll get exactly what we put into it out of it.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way generally.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I don't think it works that way ever. But if you know when to pull the plug and how much to do,
Yep.
I mean, it can work to that limited stance.
Yeah. And again, like one of the best examples that I saw about again getting back to like whole business and development side was a BattleTech by Harebrained Schemes. When they did the Kickstarter for that game, they had stretch goals, just like again the majority of people do Kickstarter. But what they did that was very smart was twofold. They arranged their stretch goals into various tiers, and then those tiers would dictate how long it would take them to make the game. So if they did, let's say the game had an 8-month development cycle. If they hit tier 1 stretch goals, that 8 months now becomes 12 months. If they hit tier 2, it becomes 16 months. But they were always budgeting the time and the money based on what their stretch goals were. And then the second thing that they did was they had a cap of their stretch goals. They said that when they hit this tier, that's it. We are not adding anything else to this game. We don't care how much money you guys donate. Because we don't want to go off scope or off development.
I feel like that could potentially be a mistake depending on how wild the thing goes, but you would definitely want to add a lot more space as you go up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like, maybe your top goal is like $1 million or whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
and then they crush it, and they're like they crush it, and you're at like $1.5 million,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, what's something that could be added to it that is not going to be like
Mm-hmm.
really large or anything that people would really like in here? Let's put that as a Kickstarter goal for no top one for 2 million, and then they reach the 2 million, you get that extra $500,000, and it took you maybe $10,000 to integrate that feature or less.
And again, like Kickstarter stretch goals and that's another topic. Like that is way too big to get into right now. But yeah, again, it's very hard to know at the beginning of a project just how much you're going to be able to get out of it, and again, how much it's going to cost to do all that stuff. Because like you just said, Shark, that you could have this amazing idea for your game and think, oh, I'll get it done in 2 months and for $30,000, and then all of a sudden you realize it's not that. It wasn't as easy to do that. It's now going to take 6 months, and let's add another 20,000 on top of that. And then what happens if it still doesn't work? And again, we've seen developers chase the scope projects. They chase these additional ideas and trying to make a square peg fit into a round hole. And this is my final example, and then I'm going to stop talking because I think my voice is going to cut out soon. But this is what happened with Clockwork Empires and with Gaslamp Games. I wanted that game to succeed so damn badly. But the problem was, as we've said, they kept chasing this kind of scope creep. And when something didn't work, guess what? They had to spend time removing it and going back to another feature. But then we're going to add something else to it. And it was just this constant state of 2 steps forward, 3 steps back over, I think, 4 years. And just as they were, again, and this goes back to what we were saying earlier, just as the foundation was getting set, they ran out of money and they couldn't finish the game. And again, when that happens, it just is a horrible time for everyone involved because they were close. I remember saying to myself, this is a great version. Give me, 6 months of polish and iterating on that version. And they were basically saying, no, we ran out of money. This game has to be released next month.
Yeah. The oh, issue I see with people wanting to endlessly develop one game,
Mm-hmm.
well, not necessarily endlessly, but support it a lot after release, is they spend all their money supporting that game, and then they go on to make their next game, and it's like, oh, we don't have any money left.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so they can't go to make that other game without fundraising because they spent literally every last dollar they had on the last one. So it didn't literally make them one red cent. They just
Yep.
broke even or lost money, and now they have to fundraise for their next game because
Mm-hmm.
they just don't have the money.
And
And everybody's like, "You made tons of money from that game. What's the problem?"
there you
Well, we
go.
spent all that money on that game.
I was just about to say that. And that's a topic we've talked about before. That people think your game was $1. You got 1 million copies sold, so you're a millionaire, right? You made all that money. Where did it go? Oh, I don't know. It went into making the game in the first place. Yeah, exactly, Algardo. Yeah. And again, like, this all goes back to trying to understand what it means to make this game. Because, like we said, you could have, and I've said this before, we've seen critical darlings, critical successful games still sink studios because, yes, that game got, 9 out of 10, and PewDiePie played it, and IGN covered it. But if it only earned, let's say, $600,000 and cost $2.5 million to make, guess what? That studio's still not making enough money to keep the lights on.
It's going to go out of business unless they do something.
Yeah. Just like what we saw with Divine Development, with Hand of Fate. Both Hand of Fate 1 and 2 were critical successes. That doesn't mean a damn thing if they're not earning enough money to keep the lights on.
Exactly.
And I hate to do this, but like here's my final point. A lot of people will look at studios like Nintendo, Blizzard, and Valve who can spend almost endless development time making their game. But they have the clout and the money to do that. If Nintendo wants to spend a year and a half on a project and then say, oh, doesn't work, let's cancel it, they can pivot like that. Not everybody can. And
They could do that 200 times and still
they
just no
probably
spread
have.
off their brow.
They probably have done that. Again, we don't know what goes on in Nintendo. Who knows how many failed concepts and things that they just didn't think would work had they, put down or they cut out.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're an independent developer, you don't have that luxury. You can't spend 3 years of your life and to say, oh, this doesn't work. I gotta go do something else now.
You could do that as a hobbyist. You can't
Oh
do
yeah.
that as indie though.
Yeah, if you've officially become the studio and you have employees working for you and you have taxes to pay on that, no, you can't do that anymore. And again, that's why you have to get your foundation settled before you really start thinking about these eye in the sky concepts.
Exactly, and that's the reason why, as a starting developer, you need to keep your scope really
Mm-hmm.
small, really small, and build probably a single genre game, but put a unique twist on it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to build the most complex game in the world for it to be good. Matter of
Yep.
fact, the more complex you make the game, the harder it is to make good because
Yep.
the complexities will fight you from making it good.
Yep.
You need to start off with a simple game with a very small scope and then make it your own. Put your own twist in it. It's a simple platformer, but you can rewind time. No idea what game that could be.
No, not at all. And yet, again, if you can have a good foundation, it really puts you ahead of the game compared to developers who spend months or years trying to find what makes this game work. But I think that is probably a really good point to end on for this week. We have just crossed over. I think we are over 2 hours in. But yeah, we got a lot of, I think, topic fodder for next week, to be sure.
Oh yeah, I got a list of like 8 things or something. We have
Nice.
topics for the next like month or so.
Awesome. But let us wrap it up for this week. And thank you, everybody, new and returning, for tuning in. If you are new, be sure to check out the Discord channel link down below. If you want to check out Shark's game, as well as join his Discord channel, you can send him a message on mine. And if people want to find you on Twitter, what is your social media buzz there?
At Nexus Games INC, then the number 1.
Mm-hmm. And I'm on Twitter at GW Bicer. I should maybe put like that somewhere, like on the Game Wisdom Live thing when we're talking. Maybe I'll think about that for next time. But that is going to do it. I'll be back later tonight for our regular game streams, and we'll be back next Sunday around 3:30, 4 p.m. EST for another design talk. Shark, as always, it was a pleasure having you on, and I'm glad you wrote down all those notes. So we'll have that for probably the next few times.
Exactly.
All right, everyone.
It's good being here.
Yep. Have a great rest of your weekend, and come back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where he's in the art and science of games. Until next time, take care.